Hey guys, welcome to the MrMaple Show. I'm Matt. Today we got another awesome Saturday showcase for you.
I'm Tim. Get excited, like, subscribe, and share, all that good stuff. We're bringing you a Mikawa family showcase.
Part 3. So we're dropping the part 3. If you hadn't already, check out 1 and 2. Yes, we have that many Mikawa variants. Today we're diving into part 3. Mikawa Yatsubusa and that Mikawa family is always one of the most popular trees we talk about. It's often our cop-out answer for what's your favorite Japanese maple. We'll say Mikawa and all of its offspring. So that way we can lump a whole bunch of cool things into one pile. Now we've kind of coined this phrase here at our nursery, Mikawa family. And that's because we like to think of the Mikawa family as a set of traits similar to that of something like the Ghost series. So rather than calling it the Mikawa series, we're kind of calling it the Mikawa family, and we'll throw several things in that category that may not be offsprings of Mikawa, but are certainly in that same category for good reason.
So once you're done viewing this video today, you can go back and check out part 1 and part 2 of the Mikawa family collection if you haven't checked those out already. That tells you a little bit about what Mikawa Yatsubusa is, and it's a pretty awesome plant. It's one of our favorites.
Yeah, there's a good reason why people are going through so many variances of Mikawa Yatsubusa, looking for new and exciting traits. It's one of the most highly sought after Japanese maples we do, and it's probably one of our top sellers here on MrMaple year in and year out. It's always consistently at the top, and as some of these new variations of Mikawa get out there, they become just as popular. I mean, we've talked about, already 10 different plants that are in that family, and we've got 5 more for you here today that have Mikawa-like habits. Now, what we mean by that is that tight shingled layering. Those are the things we qualify in that Mikawa Yatsubusa family, things that are indicative of Mikawa with that tight shingling and tight layering.
So very first up, we've got Acer palmatum Bazinga. This is a selection that we had for a long time. It's a selection by our good friend Ed Shin of New Jersey. Y'all may know him as NJ Acer. And Ed just recently got his whole garden as an arboretum status. Because
shout out to Ed.
He's got an amazing, amazing garden there in New Jersey.
Ed and Debbie, great people. They've always been super gracious to us. This was a seedling of Mikawa Yatsubusa. I mean, I saw this one in Ed's garden maybe 2013, maybe earlier. It's been a while.
It was before the name Bazinga was ever put on.
Right.
And we actually had grafted
it. Probably before the Big Bang Theory even aired.
We got it from Ed as Ed's Mikawa seedling number one.
Yeah, there were 4 of them.
Yeah.
And number 1 was the best at holding the color and the brightest.
And this one really has a bright red spring color. It does fade out mid to late spring for us, but it's a Mikawa Yatsubusa with a really good red spring color.
It's a very picked up red too, which I like. Now, a lot of these spring variances, I recommend early morning sun, late day shade. If you can give this one early morning sun, you're gonna need some sunlight on any of these types to get their best color. Same thing goes for Mystic Mikawa and some of those. If you're getting that early morning sun, you can really exaggerate that spring brightness. And I think Bazinga definitely needs a little bit of early morning sun to get to its best color. Now, I mentioned the Big Bang Theory TV show. If you know that show, Sheldon Cooper on there, his catchphrase is Bazinga. So it's kind of like, I gotcha. But I think that's where Ed got the name. In fact, I've seen him post that on Facebook before. That's where he got the name Bazinga. But a really fun plant, great colors, and a fun name. I like the name Bazinga too. So it's probably one we'll continue to offer here at MrMaple.
And it is a relatively slow grower. I mean, all of our stock plants of this are much slower growing than any of our Mikawa Yatsubusas.
And we probably got soundwood off these going back from Ed back to like maybe even 2013, 2014. It's been a while.
It's been quite a while, maybe even before that. But it's an amazing plant with some really good red spring color.
So next up here on the table, we've talked about this one. We've done a solo video on it. You guys keep asking us about it, so we keep talking about it more. It's another one I first saw at Ed Shin's. This one is Snow Kitten, sometimes referred to as Yamayuki.
Also referred to as Yukiyama, but I've heard that both of those translations really don't mean anything. So we are sticking with Snow Kitten.
Yeah, Talon Buckholt's wife kind of laughed at the name a little bit and said that was a misnomer. It would kind of mean like snow pile more than snow peak.
And so we're going back to the original name of Snow Kitten, although it's also been named under the name Elmer. And then he originally thought about putting the name on it of Mikawa Nishiki.
Yeah, it's switched around a good bit. We're trying to stick with Snow Kitten to keep it simple because it seems to make the most nomenclature sense. And it may have been the first name, I don't know. It seems heavily debated. There were many names to this one over the years, but Snow Kitten is popular for obvious reasons. This one has a swirling variegation on a Mikawa Yatsubusa form. I do find it to be a little bit wimpier than some of the other variegated Mikawas. I always let people know that one up front. You know, I wouldn't go running out paying $500 for 1 gallon of this. I see people paying several thousand sometimes online for a 2 gallon. I've seen some people selling literally a 2 gallon for $1,500. And I get the hype on this one. It's a cool plant. I've had it since 2013 as well, and it's taken me a while to get into production for a reason. It is a slower grower, and I would definitely put it on that less hardy side for Japanese maples rather than super hardy.
Yeah, and it has that Oregano Nishiki style variegation on a Mikawa Yatsubusa. So it is very unique in its variegated form of being a Mikawa Yatsubusa.
And I get what everybody's after. It is super cool.
But if you get this tree being vigorous, it will often go a little greener, and you need to prune it back on its tips in late February to push out more variegated new growth. It doesn't put on a lot of growth. So it is one that's going to require some additional care. But like Matt said, it is a slightly wimpier plant. We always want to tell people that when they're a slightly wimpier plant.
If this one wasn't so cool, we wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Most of the times if there's a Japanese maple that's not super durable, we just don't even offer it at all, or if they even think about producing it. This one's so interesting and there's so much interest in it that inevitably we want to produce it, but we always let people know up front. It can be a little trickier than some. I have lost 1 gallon to this one myself in the ground. I planted one out a couple years ago and it didn't make it. I have one that's been in my garden for over 8 years in the ground, and so it certainly can be a happy tree as well, but it is a tricky one to site sometimes. I think part of the trick to grafting this one and growing it is that if you over fertilize it, it's not going to be very interestingly variegated. And if you don't fertilize it or don't encourage it to grow, it's going to be, you know, 4 inches for 5 years. So there's a little bit of a trick to this one. We're trying to do some different cultural practices we've learned from some of our friends in Japan to try to get this one out there a little quicker and kind of create more robust plants. And that definitely seems to be working. So it may be something we offer going forward at a much more reduced price than some of those prices you're seeing out there.
But with all that being said, it is an amazingly variegated plant. There's nothing else like it. It is a Mikawa Yatsubusa with that swirling variegation. And as of to date, there's nothing else that can compete with it. Really awesome plant with some really unique colors. Next up, we have Acer palmatum Mikawa Time Sharps.
Yeah, now this name's a bit of a mouthful. It's an introduction by our friend Crispin Silva, who's come up with so many great ones. He made this list previously for part 2. I believe we covered Mystic Mikawa, which is, I think, one of the very best ones ever. Sharps times Mikawa, or Mikawa times Sharps, I think could certainly use a name upgrade. Maybe we'll talk to Crispin and see if he'll put a more nomenclature type name on this one. I think it underserves it not to have, like, you know, something really cool on it, but it is a unique tree. Now this was a seedling he found that had some traits that he thought looked like Mikawa Yatsubusa, but also Sharps pygmy. So it was mimicking both those traits, and you could see why that would be popular. It's always popular. Sharps is always popular for bonsai anyway.
It has the jagged edge. He's already got a plant named Jagged Jade. Jagged Mikawa would have been an awesome name for this plant too. But Mikawa times Sharps, it's not actually a cross. It's just something that looks similar to Sharps pygmy with that Mikawa Yatsubusa form. And amazing plant, a jagged serrated edge down the side of this leaf, and the leaf is more divided than Mikawa Yatsubusa. It's a very slow grower. I mean, it's extremely slow grower. I mean, most of our stock plants are very, very small, and we've had them for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And so this is a plant that I would expect to be 3 feet by 3 feet in 10 years.
And that's the crux of the problem when you're selling Mikawa Yatsubusa types. They're always very, very popular, but it takes a lot of plants to get a little signwood. So they don't develop a lot of growth on each of these, so it does take having a whole lot of them held back to be able to then produce it to get it out to you guys. And so some of these go very slowly, but then when you sell them, they go very, very quickly. We'll list something that we haven't offered before. Say when we list Bazinga, those are going to be gone in 5 minutes. Now, it doesn't matter if you have 5 or 50, they're going to be gone in 5 to 10 minutes. And then you're back to the starting block for starting over with a very little amount of signwood for the next year. Definitely has been the case with Sharps times Mikawa or Mikawa times Sharps. Awesome plant. We've offered it a few times. I think we even offered it back in our eBay days under the Maple Mafia. It's one we've had around here at the nursery for quite a while, but it does take a lot of plants to get a little amount of signwood. So it is one slow in production.
Yeah, it's extremely slow in production. And it's an amazing plant though, great for container plants, great for fairy gardens.
Always popular for bonsai too. I mean,
And
Sharps is
small
always
spaces.
popular for bonsai anyway, but this one gives you a little bit more Mikawa out Sharps traits. I mean, it's kind of a little bit more the foliage of Sharps, but the structure of Mikawa.
Definitely.
Good plant to be growing for sure.
Yeah, a little bit smaller leaf than Mikawa Yatsubusa as well. I mean, it's a plant that is very unique and different and is one of the slowest growing of the Mikawa Yatsubusa types. I'd say Yukiyama and Sharps, Mikawa Sharps are probably two of the slowest growing Mikawa Yatsubusa variants that we grow.
So moving on from that to one of the fastest growing Mikawa Yatsubusa types. Next we have Cun Kaku. Now this one is an interesting introduction from Japan that is a little bit more stretched out, but has a lot of characteristics that make us lump it into that Mikawa family.
Yeah, it really has that Mikawa Yatsubusa like growth to it. It has a very layering habit, but it grows to a much larger tree. So we're talking 6 to 8 foot in 10 years rather than that 3 to 4 feet. And definitely stretches out, gives you some, it's a real pleasant green in the spring, chartreuse green to a dark green during the summer, to some really nice oranges to reds in the fall.
I will say once an older tree slows down, it has a more Mikawa-esque like look to it too. Like we have a nice one in my parents' garden that's often a point people run to. We have a very old Mikawa Yatsubusa in that garden. And I would say they equally get a lot of attention. Like that one gets, it's not in the pathway like the big Mikawa, but it still draws a crowd. People are always like, tell me about this one, because it looks very nice, especially a mature specimen of this. And it does get out there a lot quicker. So if you like Mikawa, but you're looking for something that's going to put on closer to a foot of growth a year than Mikawa Yatsubusa, it does slow down a good bit in that 10-year range. But
I remember when Brian Upchurch was bringing it back from Japan, he said that layering habit really made this a faster growing Mikawa Yatsubusa. I mean, it's so unique and so different in that respect. The leaves are a little bit smaller, but that layering habit as this tree matures really gives this plant the same layering habit that you get out of a Mikawa Yatsubusa and gives it a tree that gets larger with that same habit.
A little bit different leaf shape too. This one's going to get to a nice red in the fall as well. I've had it be more red than kind of the orange red of Mikawa Yatsubusa, but I think it makes a great addition here to the Mikawa family.
Yeah, I think that's for sure. Next up, we have Acer palmatum Terama. This is a really cool plant that has that Mikawa-sized leaf with a nice twisting habit.
Now, I first saw this one in Yano's book for maples. I didn't have the tree yet when I first got that book. I've had that book for, probably, 14, 15 years now. And when we first got it, I got really excited to see this one. It was almost a pink spring growth Mikawa. This one gets some real light pale shades in it, especially if you're giving it some shade. Now, the leaf shape reminds me a lot of Kurinajishi. So we like to think of this one as part Mikawa, part Kurinajishi, because it kind of bridges the gap between the two.
It definitely has a larger leaf than Kurinajishi, and that twisting habit, it's very similar to it, but that tight or compact habit and that larger leaf really make you think of Mikawa Yatsubusa. And it's really got a really good red fall color as well.
The fall color actually reminds me a little bit more of the Kurinajishi also, so maybe there's some shared parentage there. Now the shape's definitely going to be more Mikawa Yatsubusa. It tends to be a tight, dense habit to it. Very regal look to it. It almost looks like a ruffled edge to it. The leaf will have some of that twisting you're familiar with Kurinajishi, but again, the shape's going to look so much more like Mikawa Yatsubusa. Now, this one's a little faster growing than typical Mikawa, but not by a lot. Typically, this one's going to be in that 6 to 8 foot range, even in 10 years, but a really nice, dense habit to it.
I know we've been growing this plant for probably 10 plus years now, and it's one that stands out in the garden, and people always see it and they say, what in the world is that? Because its structure is just so regal out there in the garden, and it's definitely very unique with that larger twisting leaf.
You can get some really unique spring new growth on this one also. I think the Cun Kaku and the Taroyama are both interesting new avenues. So as we go forward, collecting seed from these may give us even more interesting Mikawa family types. They may not actually be lineage of Mikawa, but we put them in that category because that tight shingled layering, that similar habit to them, and I think they add a lot to what you can have in a Mikawa Yatsubusa style setting.
I mean, there's so many different ones. If you see in part 1, part 2, and now part 3, another red variant, another variegated variant, completely different styles.
Part 4 coming soon, maybe?
One of the slowest growing, one of the fastest growing, and one that has that twisting leaf. I mean, it's an amazing, all these different variants you can get with Mikawa Yatsubusa.
If we get into a part 4, we're going to have to do a lot of Area 51 stuff. So some of the rare evaluations we're looking at that may not make it to cultivar status, we would definitely have to bring some of those in to do part 4.
I think we could probably do part 5 if you really wanted.
We probably could. Mikawas are one of our favorites, and for good reason. We love that tight layering. Mikawa Yatsubusa itself creates a bonsai-like habit in the landscape, And the variations of that are so interesting because they take what we love about Mikawa and they give you a little bit of a twist on it, something a little bit unique and different. So we hope you like this Mikawa Yatsubusa Part 3, Mikawa Yatsubusa Family Part 3.
Yeah, it's such a fun grouping. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your gardening friends. If you like Mikawa Yatsubusa, they're gonna like it too. So I'm sure they'll appreciate you sharing it.
Hey, make sure to sign up to get notified via email whenever these are in stock. If you don't see one on our website, definitely be signing up for those 10 at 10 emails. We're always adding new stuff there, and that's where many of these items will appear first in larger numbers. So we greatly appreciate you shopping on MrMaple.com. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.